Let's record here. All right. So, all right, who remembers what an amino acid is, guys? Who remembers? Okay, so that's the first thing we want to talk about, an amino acid. So what is an amino acid?
The building blocks of protein.
Good. So in other words, what is it though? Like what is, like physically, what is it?
Protein.
No. What is it? Starts with an M.
Molecule.
Good. It's a molecule. Very good. Now, who remembers what this molecule looks like? Who remembers? What does this molecule look like? What do you guys think? How many parts did it have?
3.
It did. It had 3 parts. So give me the 3 parts, somebody.
The amino group, the carboxyl group, and the R group.
Okay, so let's go with Valerie on this one. Valerie, what are the 3 parts?
The amino group, the R group, and the carboxyl group.
All right, good. So it kind of looked like this. So that's the amino group. Okay, and then it had the R group, and then it had the carboxyl group. Okay, so now, this right here is one amino acid molecule, right? Now, remember the R group is what makes the amino acids different. And the reason why we need to understand amino acids is exactly what Ethan said. All right, Ethan, what did you say about amino acids?
They're the building blocks of proteins.
Exactly. And so what happens is this, right? When you take amino acids, right? So here I have a bunch of amino acids that I copied, right? So when you take amino acids, all right, let me see if I can fit this one out and put it right there. Okay, so when you take amino acids and so this is an amino acid, 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 okay? When you connect amino acids together, right? So let's connect these amino acids together. And obviously this is not how they get connected. You have to take off the hydrogen and all that good stuff, right? But we covered that in a different video. But this thing right here, okay, this chain of amino acids, okay, what is this thing? What do scientists call a chain of amino acids? What is this thing called? What is it?
Proteins?
Yeah, that's right. This thing is a protein. This whole thing is a protein, right? So this whole year, we studied molecules so you can understand, for example, one important molecule, an amino acid. And now you should understand that when amino acids, right? This is an amino acid, 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 this is an amino acid. When you connect amino acids together and you form a chain of amino acids, we call that a protein. Does that make sense? So it's very important that you guys understand that concept, okay? Now, so give me a thumbs up, thumbs down if you kind of like, if that's a good review, right? We kind of get it? We're good? Okay, so now here's the other part, right? We talked about proteins as being what? What do we compare them to in your cell phones?
Apps.
Apps, right? And so if proteins are like apps, right, we need codes. Okay, we need codes, all right, to build these apps. So cells need codes. And where are these codes going to be found?
In DNA.
In DNA. Very good. Exactly, right? And so today what we're going to talk about is how these codes in DNA are used to make a protein, because there's a big process involved, right? So ultimately, how are these codes used to make a chain of amino acids? That's what today is about. So it's very important that you guys understand that learning goal right there. Okay, so the learning goal is how do we get from DNA codes to a protein, to a chain of amino acids? That is the code. So go ahead and write that down. Everybody type it in the chat so I know what the learning goal is. So type it in the chat. Okay, type it in the chat. Type the learning goal in the chat. How today's learning goal today, okay, at the end of today, you should start having an idea of how the cell uses codes to build the protein. Okay, that's the learning goal today. So type it in the chat, type it in the chat. All right, that's the learning goal. Very important. So what I did is I have this video that I made a couple years back because I was preparing for COVID like 5 years ago. Okay, I have this video and we'll come back to this one. So let me go ahead and put this one on. Put them there. Okay, let's go to this one first. Okay, so I have this video here. And this video here is meant to help you understand this big process, okay? I linked it in the agenda, but like I said, I want to go through it with you guys so you guys understand all these little intricacies, okay? Got it? So.
Welcome back, guys. Okay, today what we're going to talk about is a simple review that will help you for this year's final. What we've been talking about the entire year is obviously biology. And remember that all living things are made up of cells, okay? And the most important concept that you need to take this year is that these cells, in order for them to stay alive, they need proteins. Okay? And proteins are tools that the cell needs to stay alive, to keep it alive, okay? And
All right, so let's pause it there, okay? So what did I say these guys are right here?
Cells.
Good. So this is a cell and that's a cell. Very good. Both of these are cells. Okay, number one. All right, now, okay, let's go with, that was, where are you, Santana? Okay, all right, Santana, oh, there it is. All right, so there it is. And Valerie sent something today, good. Okay, now, Desiree, okay, do you remember which cell is which? So like cell B and cell A? Do you remember which one's the animal cell and which one's the plant cell from your 7th grade class? And make sure you turn your camera, if not, you're not going to be eligible for your extra credit. Okay, so Desiree, go for it.
I don't remember.
Oh, man, you don't remember 7th grade? Okay, Elizabeth, which one's the plant cell?
B.
B, there you go. This is the plant cell, very good. Okay, and this guy over here, that's the animal cell, or it's actually what our cells look like as well. Now, so if we had to take a look at these guys in 3D, okay, this is what they would look like, right? So if we're taking a look here, let me go ahead and escape here. Okay, so if we are taking a look at this cell, right, this is what we're looking at. So what I'm showing you is the following, right? So when we zoom in, there's a cell membrane because the cell's enclosed, right? The lipids, right, that make the outer layer. And so this right here is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm showing you in my diagram. So it's very important that you guys understand this concept, right? So let me put this here and here. So really, this is like a 3D version of what I'm showing you in my video, right? Like that, okay? So let me blow it up a little bit. Okay, so what I need you guys to understand is that these two things it's basically this. All right, now this part right here, what is this part called? The thing that looks like an egg, like a hard-boiled egg that's cut in half. What is that?
The nucleus.
Very good, very good. Nucleus, very good. It's the nucleus, very good. Okay, so those are the nucleuses of the cell. Now, and right here in the diagram in this cell, okay, that's the nucleus right there. So hopefully you guys can see that pretty clearly, okay? So the nucleus, and all the other things, what are the other things called? What are the other things called?
Organelles.
Very good. So all these other things, right? Okay, those are different organelles, all right? So we talked about one very special organelle, this green one right there, that's the mitochondria, right? And so the cell has a bunch of organelles, okay, right? See all these little things, all these organelles, right? And so the cell, that's what it looks like, right? Now, what did I say what's the most important part though? Like with respect to the video, what did I say about the proteins though? Why are they important?
To keep the cell alive.
Okay, good. So the proteins, make sure you guys have that in your notes, right? So let's make sure we highlight that. Okay, so they do keep the cell alive. Well, what did I use in my analogy when we talked about proteins? Proteins are really what?
Apps.
They're like apps for the cell. Very good, right? So if you think of your cell, if you think of your cells like cell phones, right? Like your cell phones, they don't work without apps. So it's the same concept with your own cells of your body. They don't work without these proteins. So it's very important that we understand like that portion, right? So let's continue. Here we go. All right, here we go.
Without proteins, the cells would die because it wouldn't have all the tools it needs, okay, to make energy, to maintain its DNA, to maintain its cell membrane. Proteins are the tools that the cell needs to do every single job inside the cell, all right? Now, how does a cell make its proteins? That is the key. That is the idea that you need to understand, okay? How does the cell make its proteins, all right? Now, the first concept is, well, the first step is cells have DNA, okay? So cells have their DNA. Every single cell has DNA. Doesn't matter, you know, bacteria, animal cells, human cells, any type of cell is gonna have DNA.
Okay, so what is this right here, guys? Okay, what is this right here?
DNA.
Okay, it's the DNA. Very good, very good. Now, what do we say? What do we know about DNA so far? So let's go with somebody random here. Okay, let's go with Sophia. Sophia, are you there, Sophia? What do we remember about DNA?
It has two sides.
It has two sides. Very good, right? And it looks almost like a twisted ladder. And what's the DNA, Sophia, made out of? Who remembers? Raise your little so you can get that extra credit. Okay, Benjamin, what is it? What's the DNA made out of?
Nucleotide.
Very good, nucleotides, right? Now, the big thing that we need to understand though is, okay, where is this guy located? Where is it located inside the cell?
In the nucleus.
In the nucleus, very good, right? So this guy is actually in here. He's in here. So we need to understand that concept there, right? That this guy is so important that it has a special place in the cell where it's kind of protected. All right, it's that important. And tell me again, Elizabeth, why is DNA so important? What information does it have? What does it hold?
It stores genetic codes.
Very good. It stores genetic codes. Very good. Okay, and so let's make sure you guys understand that concept. And who remembers how we read these genetic codes? Who remembers?
Nucleotides at a time.
What is that?
3 nucleotides at a time.
Exactly, 3 nucleotides at a time, right? So now that we kind of have an idea of this situation, we can go.
Where did this DNA come from? Okay, from its parents, from the other cells, okay? So in our case, our parents gave us our DNA, and that's the DNA that's inside our cells, all right? So cells need DNA. Why do they need DNA? Because DNA has all the codes, okay, necessary to build the proteins, okay? And these codes are, the fancy word for that is genes, all right? Or another way you can think of genes are as protein recipes, all right? So all our cells in their nucleus have DNA, and this DNA holds all the codes that the cell needs to make its proteins, okay? Now, how do we get to the protein? How does the cell make the protein? Well, we got to start with the DNA, right? Now, let's imagine that we have this code, this gene, all right? Now, this gene holds, okay, is a code that will, that has information to make a particular protein. All
right, so I'm going to give you guys 2 minutes to make sure you write down everything that's on the screen right now. So take 2 minutes, make sure everything is on the screen here. All right, 2 minutes. And remember a couple things about this. This thing that I showed you right here, this represents a gene, and we read the gene 3 nucleotides at a time. Okay, and these are the codes that I'm talking about, right? So a gene is a string of codes, right? And so make sure that you guys understand that the DNA is in the nucleus, right? And that DNA has pieces, okay, of information that we call genes. Okay, so it's very important that you guys understand that concept. So go ahead and take 2 minutes. And in order for us to make this protein, we need to get this information to the things in the cell that make the proteins. So we'll talk about that. Try to draw those cells. You know, you don't have to draw them specifically. The biggest thing is if you draw like one big circle and then a little circle, okay, and inside that's the DNA, so that way you know. That concept there, all right? So let's continue a little bit. So what is this piece right here? What is this piece right here? Let's go with somebody random. Okay, so Ariana, tell me what this thing is right here again, one more time. What's this thing right here?
A DNA.
It's a piece of DNA, but we call it a what?
Code.
It has codes. Yes, it does have codes, but what do we call it? Someone put it in the chat for her. Someone put it in the chat for her. What do we call this thing?
Gene.
It's a gene. Very good. Okay, so this is just a gene. Remember, it's just a piece of DNA. And this piece of DNA, all right, has codes in it. And those codes we're going to use to make the protein, all right, to make that protein. So that's very important that we understand that concept, okay? So here we go.
All right. And there are many genes that DNA has, all right? Maybe 20,000 or so. Now, what the first thing that needs to happen is that this code, right, needs to get copied, all right? And it needs to get copied in a process called transcription, all right? Because remember, DNA is in the nucleus, all right? And the guys that are gonna make the protein, okay, are called ribosomes, okay? So the ribosomes are literally, okay, in here, right? Out here in the cytoplasm, right? And on the rough ER, but DNA is inside here. So we got to take this, the information and send it out to the ribosome, okay? And that's why we have to take this code and copy it, all right? And copy it and turn it into a different version, okay? And that version is called mRNA, right? So during transcription, the gene gets turned into mRNA. How does this happen? Well, it uses the base pair and Jules. So if there's a guanine, okay, then there's an enzyme that adds a cytosine. Thymine, adenine, cytosine, guanine, G, C, A's goes with U, right? So because remember, we're making RNA, it wouldn't be a T. And so once transcription is over, now we have a copy of the gene, but in RNA form.
Okay, so now I just gave you a lot of information right now, a lot of information. So let's just recap, okay? Number one, the DNA is located in the nucleus, okay? The DNA cannot leave, all right? It's protected, it has to stay in the nucleus protected. So somehow these ribosomes, what do the ribosomes do again? What do ribosomes do?
They build protein.
Exactly. So the ribosome is the one that's going to build the protein, but the instructions, the codes for building that protein, it's in DNA. So we have to get those codes out to the ribosome somehow. So what we have to do is we have to take that piece of DNA, that gene, and we have to transcribe it, which means just copy. Okay? And so when we copy the gene, what we do is we create another molecule called mRNA. That guy right here, this guy is the copy of the gene. Okay, now that we have this copy, right? Now this copy can go out of the nucleus and to the ribosome, and the ribosome will go ahead and read it. It's very important that you guys understand that process there. So go ahead and take a minute to jot down any little notes that you need. So the big dilemma is this. DNA has the instructions, the codes for making the protein, right? It's almost think of it like recipes, right? Like the recipe books in the nucleus and the chefs outside the nucleus. So somehow we got to get that information out to them, but the DNA cannot leave. So instead, we're going to copy that message and send it out to those little ribosomes, okay, that are going to use that information to make a protein. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what that looks like in a real video, okay? All right. So let's go ahead and show you what this looks like, okay? So remember, here we go. Let me go ahead and show it to you guys. Okay, so this is what I mean, right? So let's blow this up. Okay, so remember, let's get oriented a little bit. Okay, so remember, this is the nucleus. Let's put it in a different color we can see. Let me see, maybe black. Yeah. Okay, so nucleus. And inside the nucleus, remember, the DNA is inside of there, right? And so here's the nucleus. All right, this thing right here. So what I'm going to do is right now I'm going to zoom in, okay? And remember, where are the ribosomes? Where are the ribosomes?
In the cytoplasm?
In the cytoplasm, very good. So the ribosomes are out here. Okay, they're out here. Here's the ribosome. So all those little guys are ribosomes, right? Think of them like little workers. And their job, little construction workers. So think of ribosomes like little construction workers. And what they construct is proteins. But just like any good construction worker, right? If he doesn't have the instructions on how to build something, he can't build it. The instructions are in the DNA. So this little guy right here, right? Let's go ahead and let's do this, right? Let's make it a little bit more fun here. So let me get my snipping tool here. So let's put new. Let's take a shot of this guy right here. Okay, and let's copy this guy. Let's go over here. Let's put him here. And so here's the ribosome. So we're going to call him Ethan the ribosome right here. See that? There's Ethan, right? And so imagine that Ethan the ribosome right here, he's a construction worker. Ethan the ribosome. Okay, so he's the ribosome. So what he wants to do is, I want to make proteins. I want to make proteins. That's what he does. He makes proteins. But he doesn't know what protein to make. See how confused he looks right now? He looks confused because he doesn't know what protein to make. So the nucleus has to send out a message to this guy. And when this guy gets his message RNA molecule, now it's like he got the instruction manual, and now he can start working on that protein. Does that make sense? That's how this works. So now let's go ahead, okay, and show you what this looks like, right? So we're gonna zoom in, right? Here's the nucleus. When we go inside the nucleus, okay, there's the DNA, right? The DNA it's like so long, it has to get really squished together, and we call that a chromosome. But when we need to make a protein, the DNA kind of like unwinds, and here is the gene that I'm talking about. See that? So there's the gene, right? So this gene is what is that? This gene right here. Whoops, I don't like that. I don't want to do that. This gene, hold on. This gene right here represents, this thing right here represents this in our diagram. That right here, this thing right here. So that is represented by this, right? And so somehow we got to copy this. And so what ends up happening, and we'll talk about this more tomorrow, right? But there's an enzyme called RNA polymerase that's going to make that mRNA. So what he does is he opens up the DNA molecule and he starts building this thing right here, that's right here at the top that I got my cursor on. That's the mRNA. So it's copying DNA, okay, by making a mRNA, and then this right here is the mRNA. That right there is what it's what I was showing you guys right here, right? So now that we have that copy made, this thing now has to go, and a couple of things have to happen to it. If we were in class, we would talk about it more specifically, but it's almost like it's getting like edited a little bit, but that's the copy that I was talking about. And this copy now leaves the nucleus, and now this copy, these codes are gonna go to Ethan the ribosome. There's Ethan the ribosome right there. Okay, let's give him a face. So this is Ethan the ribosome. And Ethan the ribosome, now he has his instructions, right? He has his instructions. He's like, all right, I can go ahead and grab these instructions, right? And then let's give him some legs and a belly button. Okay, and a shirt maybe, and some arms. I don't know. But there's Ethan the ribosome. And now that he has his mRNA, now he's happy, right? Because he can now build the protein, okay? Now he can construct the protein that he needs, okay? And so that's how this works. And ultimately, okay, we'll talk about the details tomorrow a little bit more or soon, but ultimately, and I put this in like really like fast speed here, so you guys can see it happen real fast. Okay, we'll talk about what these things are. These are tRNAs, right? But anyways, what ends up happening is Ethan the ribosome starts making this protein, and that's what this purple necklace is. That's the protein. But he can't do it, okay? And there's the protein. There it is. Boom. See that? And so this thing right here is the protein that he made using the instructions that came from the nucleus, right? And so ultimately, that's what I want you guys to really understand today, is that there is that your body, okay, is made up of cells, right? And inside the cells, there's DNA, right? And that DNA has these things called genes. These genes need to be copied, all right, okay, during transcription, so that we can make copies called mRNA. And then these mRNAs are going to go to the ribosome, and the ribosome is going to use it to make proteins. Okay? Any questions so far on this? Any questions so far? I hit you guys with a lot today. All right? With a lot. But I recorded everything, so I will post it onto YouTube so that way you guys can review all the little details. There's still more, guys. There's still more. Okay? But I wanted to give you guys this first idea of transcription and understanding why transcription is important. Can anybody give me the reason why transcription is important? Transcription is the process of copying a gene. Why is transcription so important? How come you cannot make a protein without transcription? Who can tell me the answer to that question for 4 extra credit points? Why is transcription so important?
Because ribosomes needs mRNA to make protein.
Yes, but why is transcription so important?
Because then you wouldn't be able to copy DNA.
Exactly. If you can't copy it, then the ribosomes won't be able to get to those instructions. Do you understand? Ribosomes, Ethan the ribosome is not allowed in the White House. He's not allowed in there. He's just a little worker. So we got to send out the instructions to this little guy. So ribosomes are like little peasants that all they do is like work, right? They don't get to hang out in that big cozy nucleus there, all right? But they're so important because without those ribosomes, the cell wouldn't have all the proteins that it needs to stay alive, okay? All right, guys, so with that said, I'm gonna go ahead and give you guys a chance to digest all that.